Welcome to the Nick Modern Survivor Profile bonus video.
Bonus video
for those still waiting on the hyped up Sonic 2 bonus video.
Because I clearly didn't make the first one long enough. Anyway, quite a lot of cut content, quite a lot of little extra things I want to talk about, so let's begin.
Watch the original video.
Let's kick this off with a bang then.
One game which was absolutely amazing with Nick,
no,
which I
not
just had
that.
to show.
Well, obviously I'm going to be showing that in this video, but, well, that's going to be at the end. Sorry about that. But the other most interesting thing in this video, I'll put at the start for you to compensate, and that is that, well, I may have done a little bit of ladding. Yeah. So basically, me and someone on the XPM Discord called Spike, who's a relatively active player, we're getting into a bit of a conversation over whether it is genuinely better to use the dual wields with Nick. And to be fair, I will agree that the dual wields are underused a little bit. I say a little bit. I do think the Magnum is just better, but I don't think the dual wields are terrible, and I never see anyone use dual wields, so that's what I mean when I say they're a little bit underrated. I still think that really you should stick to Magnum. Spike was saying that actually the dual wields are pretty good DPS, and that they're better against the tank, and trying to make an argument for them, and I thought, you know what, right, let's lab this, because I still was pretty certain that the Magnum would probably come out better. Although, with dual wield again, I still thought were valid. I really thought, nah, against tanks, the Magnum's going to be better. So I started labbing the DPS. I went into Left 4 Dead and I recorded myself firing the Magnum and the dual wield pistols as fast as I could. This was just in vanilla Left 4 Dead, not in XPM. But Nick doesn't get any kind of fire rate buff. He only gets reload speed buffs, which we have exact numbers for, so we'll know how fast he reloads. And he only gets damage buffs and stuff like that. So we don't have to record specifically me firing in XPM for this to apply to XPM. So I put this into DaVinci Resolve, went frame by frame and counted how many frames on average were in between each shot. Now, to be fair, with the dual wield pistols, I might have been able to fire a teensy bit faster if I really spammed. But if I spammed any harder, it would be enough that, like, it would distract me from playing the game. So I think that it'd be better for me to use this more realistic spam anyway. And when I say this, all I'm saying is sometimes I counted 3 frames and sometimes I counted 6. On average, I counted 4. So clearly, like, that's 6. Maybe I just didn't click fast enough for a split second. But again, I think that's realistic that you're going to miss a split second or so every now and then. So I counted the frames in between each shot for both the dual wields and the Magnum, and I counted the frames for reloading. Did a whole bunch of math to figure out how much damage a second you can do with them if you don't have to reload, and then how long it takes for you to empty a clip and reload, and then use that time that it takes to reload and add it into the equation, and also take into account how long it takes to fire all your bullets and reload and blah blah blah, and basically eventually figured out your damage per second, assuming that you're just constantly firing and reloading, and like the target isn't dying, you're just seeing how much damage you can get. So with that being said, in the vanilla game, I figured out that the dual wields probably deal about 160 damage per second, or 255 if you don't have to reload. The vanilla Magnum does about 130 DPS, which I must admit, I really thought that the Magnum would have had a higher DPS than the dual wields, because the Magnum, in my opinion, feels a lot better than the dual wields in vanilla Left 4 Dead, and it has 257 DPS without the reload, which is literally just 2 more. It's more, but barely more than the dual wields. That's what I figured out for the vanilla game, but we're not talking about the vanilla game. We're talking about Nick with these weapons. And I found that Nick with the dual wields actually had a relatively impressive 444 DPS, or 510 DPS without reloading. Which, yeah, I will admit, that's pretty good. That's more than I was expecting. But still, you gotta remember, infected have increased health in this mod. A charger has like 1,000 health or something. It's gonna take over 2 seconds for you to kill a charger with this. Whereas with the Magnum, you could kill it in 1 shot if you get a headshot, or just 3 quick shots otherwise. The Magnum, I eventually found out, had technically a lower DPS. Its DPS is 389 damage per second. Which, yeah, that's not as much as the dual wields, which is 444, so fair play to Spike. You can actually deal more damage to a tank with dual wields. Technically. There is, of course, the reload speed buff that you can get with the Magnum if you land all 3 shots. If you can always land all 3 shots and always get the reload speed buff, then the Magnums are more DPS. They're 503 compared to 444. However, you got to remember that that's not going to happen most of the time. I would say that would probably happen about a third of the time, and I figured it out, like, what the damage per second would be around if you got it a third of the time, and it came out to 425. So assuming that you only hit all 3 shots, like, a third of the time, you will still do more damage with the dual wields than with the Magnum. So, yeah, assuming realistic standards for human players, dual wields are better, but technically, if you're playing 100% optimally, Magnums are better for tank DPS. But again, the Magnums are going to remain king for special infected killing, for the main reason that if you don't have to reload with the Magnum, the DPS shoots all the way from 389 to 1,220. Yes, it like nearly quadruples. It's a lot more damage. And again, because there are no special infected that can survive 3 body shots from the Magnum, and obviously you get 3 in a clip, that means that, yeah, you can basically drop the special infected in half a second with the Magnum as long as you don't miss shots all the time. So, yeah, definitely better than the dual wields for dealing with special infected. So, it seems like the Magnum does generally win out, but I will admit, this proves there's some merit to the dual wield. It's on average, unless you've got a crazy good player, is probably going to deal more damage than the Magnum to a tank. But again, only incrementally more, so... I mean, I think that you still should give the dual wields a chance, because of course, I think that the optimal Nick play would be to constantly swap between dual wields and Magnum anyway, so if you're getting comfortable with doing that, then yeah, I think that you should use the dual wields, but definitely don't solo the dual wields, in my opinion, over the Magnum.
Oh yeah, and before we finish, I have one correction to issue to the original video, which is that I mentioned that you get double reload speed if you get the reload speed buff from landing all 3 shots with the Magnum, and I was actually wrong about that. It felt like double to me, and I'd heard people saying it was double before, so when I actually looked at the numbers and saw a 50 in there, I thought, 50, so half speed, so half time, so, you know, it's going to be double speed, but no, it was 50% faster, which would mean that it's a 1.5 times faster. So you only get a 1.5 times faster reload, but that's still quite a significant buff.
But while we're on the topic of weapon picks, I kind of missed a big thing in my last video, which, to be fair, it's not kind of that important, I suppose, but I didn't talk about primaries with Nick. And it makes sense. It's kind of a problem with the formatting of these videos, to be fair, in some sense, because I'm mostly focused on looking at the list of abilities I have and talking about every one. And so sometimes it can be easy to forget to talk about something that's still important to the character that isn't an ability of theirs. What I'm getting at is that Nick doesn't have any kind of abilities for any primary weapons, which at first would make you think, well, why the hell is it important to talk about primary weapons with Nick? But actually, it makes him probably one of the most important characters to pick your primary weapons with, because, well, he's one of the only characters that can use just about any primary weapon. Almost every character is forced to use a certain type of primary weapon to be played optimally because of the fact that weapon classes exist. I mean, you can pick a different shotgun with Coach, but at the end of the day, you're picking a shotgun, and generally the best shotgun is going to be the Benelli, so you're probably picking the Benelli. Maybe the Spaz, it depends. For Nick, though, of course, his weapon classes are secondary, so for the primary, you can really have anything. That being said, though, you do have to take into account what I've already mentioned, that Nick's biggest weakness is commons. So when you pick your primary, you're going to want to pick a primary that's made for dealing with commons. For this reason, the most common choice that I think is probably the overall best pick for Nick is the AK-47. I mean, it's a machine gun, so it fires a lot of bullets relatively fast that can kill common infected, better than most, and as well as that, it's surprisingly accurate at long range because the AK has a slightly slower fire rate than the other assault rifles, but that actually kind of helps it out because it means that it stays more accurate as you fire it constantly. And it's also actually not too bad to not even hold down the trigger, but just tap the trigger relatively fast to get more accurate shots. And you can do that very well with the AK. So yeah, the AK is a very good pick, and it's what most people will go with. Although that's not to say the AK is the only pick. There are definitely other completely valid picks. When I first started using Nick, my primary pick was always the H&K MSG sniper, because I absolutely loved using snipers in Left 4 Dead. I would say in the vanilla game, all the weapons, for the most part, except for weapons that are directly better versions of other weapons, are kind of equal in value. They're all about as good as each other in terms of just doing damage. With the just small caveat that I'd say that shotguns are slightly better at dealing at special infected, but obviously only at close range, but you can still kind of fire at long range with shotguns. Obviously, it's just better to use not a shotgun at long range. Personally, I like to stick to the snipers in vanilla Left 4 Dead all the time because I really like to be able to go as far away from my team as possible while still having them in my view and not have to worry about them getting jockeyed away and then I was getting screwed, and just being able to scope in and shoot a jockey off from like 200 miles away. I was already very partial to snipers, and so when I was newer to XP mod, obviously given the ability to pick any weapon I want, I would pick the sniper. Now, that wasn't the best choice for Nick because I mentioned before, you really want to pick a primary that covers your weakness of commons, and snipers are not really the best at dealing with common infected. So, sniper is definitely a weaker pick. However, I will give credit to the sniper. The fact that you can obviously shoot things off at really long range is super valuable, so it's an usable pick for Nick, even though I definitely think it's one of the lower picks. Which of course leaves the last option that I'd say is super valuable, which are shotguns. With shotguns, you probably want either the Benelli or the Spaz. I would lean towards the Benelli. It's kind of funny, when I started playing this game at first, I always thought the Spaz was better. But I think that was just kind of a bias because the Spaz was one of the only weapons in the game that I actually recognised from playing COD Zombies. And so obviously I kind of just gravitated towards it because I actually knew what it was like. I knew it was like a high tier shotgun compared to the pump shotguns. And so I thought, oh yeah, this is the good weapon. But to be fair, the Benelli kind of beats it out in most situations because the Spaz has such widespread for a shotgun that even when you crouch and try and get close to things, it's kind of hard to concentrate all your damage on a target. Whereas with the Benelli, even though of course it's still a shotgun, it's still not that accurate. If you really try, you can actually concentrate your bullets in an area quite well. So I'd say it's definitely the best for doing things like crowning witches, and it's definitely the best for doing things like trying to shoot off a charger as fast as possible. And of course, besides that, shotguns in general are just good for getting common infected off of you compared to other weapons. Shotguns are probably the best, except arguably assault rifles, but I would probably lean more towards shotguns. And of course, that is the value of the Spaz. Although the Spaz does have a higher spread, it can be better to have a higher spread if you're really worried about commons, because of course, if you have more spread, you're going to hit more commons with the bullets. Even if you have a hard time hitting a single target with as many of those bullets as possible, when you got multiple targets, it's more useful. Anyway, all that being said, as I say, I think you should stick with the Benelli. And I think the Benelli is honestly a surprisingly rare choice you see from Nyx. I think the Benelli is really up there as one of the better choices. I do think the AK is best, I already mentioned, but I think only by a small amount. I think the Benelli is very close behind. The main problem of taking a shotgun, obviously being that you can't fight things at long range, is kind of negated by the fact that as long as you aren't being hit by commons and you're able to crouch, Nyx Magnum is actually surprisingly precise at long range. I mean, this was in the background footage of the first video, but you can see here, I land a really tough shot on this smoker that I can't even see on my screen, but I just know it's there because I can follow its tongue. But all this distance, I still hit him dead on with this Magnum. So, you know, as long as you're crouching and you give yourself some time to aim and you're not getting hit by commons, you can fight things really long range with the Magnum. So I feel like that kind of cancels out the weakness of the shotgun, especially because the only time at which you can't deal with things at long range is when you get hit by commons, but the shotgun's the one that's best for dealing with commons. Before we close this segment though, let me quickly address what might seem like some glaring omissions to some of you. There are some weapons I haven't even brought up. The main ones I'm talking about are the submachine guns, which, I mean, they're not terrible, but they're generally not strong picks because their damage is just simply factually low compared to the others. Although, that being said, the Israeli is very, very, very precise, especially with the free laser sight you can give yourself at the start of the game. It is surprisingly precise at long range, even while moving. There was a period in time in which I did use the Israeli instead of the AK for a decent amount of time, and I won't say it's terrible. It's definitely usable, but the main problem is, just as I mentioned, the DPS on them is kind of sad. Now, you may be wondering why am I complaining about that, because I did mention that damage doesn't matter so much when you're dealing with commons, because most commons will die in one bullet to any primary anyway, even if it is a submachine gun, so why does it matter the damage? Well, your Magnum may be really good at special infected damage, it may be a really good way to kill SIs really fast, but at the end of the day, it still only has 3 bullets. And although I kind of hate to say this, I have to admit that it really does pay to have a primary weapon that you can still deal a decent amount of damage with, because when you have a Magnum and a primary like a Israeli that isn't good for DPS and is only good for commons, it's very, very common. That was not on purpose. I tried to stop myself. I tried to think of a different word and, well, too late now. It's very, very common for you to be in a situation where someone gets charged, you quickly have to deal with it, and so because you're kind of in a situation where for whatever reason you might need to free them like right away, you just fire all 3 your bullets as fast as you can, and one of those bullets miss. And it's a shame, but you've missed that bullet now. You either have to stand around and wait 2 full seconds for you to reload the magnum before you can shoot again, or you can swap to your primary and finish off the charger. Now, if I have a shotgun right now, or an AK, that's not too bad. Especially the shotgun, it would be good for that. If I have an Israeli, then honestly, I should probably just swap to the magnum, bite the bullet, and wait the full 2 seconds to reload it, and then shoot the charger. At which point, maybe that person's taken enough damage to get downed. Maybe we've been separated from the rest of the team because they were running ahead. I don't know. But yeah, that's why I didn't mention the Israeli. Although, as I say, it's not a terrible option, but I would take any of the other options over it, to be honest, any day usually. But there's another one, which you may be even more surprised I didn't bring up, which is the grenade launcher. Now, to those of you who don't play XP mod, this may be one of the first things you thought when I mentioned you can give yourself any weapon you want in the game from the very start. You may have been like, ooh, I can't wait to give myself the grenade launcher and start like just destroying everything right from the start. But the grenade launcher's bad. It just kind of is. Now, the thing is that there is currently, at least, no ability in the entire mod that allows you to deal more damage or fire faster or reload faster or anything like that with the grenade launcher. It's just the vanilla grenade launcher from the normal game with no buffs at all. And you may think, well, the vanilla grenade launcher in the normal game is amazing though, isn't it? But like, personally, I don't even think it's that good. Like, yes, it's crazy damage, obviously, and it's very fun to use. However, it's one shot in a clip. You've only got 30 shots in total. It does do massive damage, but it also does massive damage to yourself and your teammates if you're not careful while using it. And it has such a massive explosion that it is really easy to hit yourself or your teammates with it. And then on top of all that, you have the fact that it has a ridiculously long reload time, which makes you very, very vulnerable. So all this being said, it's already a little bit sketchy using the grenade launcher in my opinion, even in the vanilla game. In XP mod, it's even worse because everything has more health, but you're not doing more damage. You're still doing the same amount of damage and you're still spending the same amount of time to reload. So the grenade launcher kind of becomes pathetic, arguably even the worst weapon in the entire mod. Which is kind of funny, honestly. But yeah, you really don't want to pick grenade launcher with Nick, I would say. I could kind of see an argument for it just because, again, terrible with commons and, oh, it's like a burst of damage as well if you have the problem like I mentioned with the Israeli. But I don't see it. That leaves only one more I can think of to bring up, which is the M60. You can give yourself an M60 from the start. It's not a terrible option. It's a machine gun, so it's decent with getting commons off you. It does a lot of damage. It's not that inaccurate to say it's a big, heavy machine gun. But of course, you still have the same problem you would always have with it, which is 150 bullets and it's done. And then you have nothing but your Magnum. But to be fair, your Magnum is infinite ammo and it is your main source of damage, so that isn't the end of the world. So I'll admit, I could see maybe if someone started using the M60 all the time and started doing really well, then I could maybe see it being a decent choice. But overall, I would consider the M60 a weak choice because, well, you're just going to run out of ammo so quickly. And there are other options that have way more ammo and should have similar results. And now, the moment you've been waiting for will come right after one more clip. I just have to issue a public service announcement. Ball, I know you're watching this.
Get back, you bastard!
Fuck you. Alright, fine, I've stalled enough. Here we go. Here's the big clip that I've been bigging up. To be fair, it should be a pretty cool and impressive game. While getting footage, I had one game in particular which I feel like was almost a perfect example of all the uses
that you will have of Nick's abilities in XP mod, as well as how best to, well, you know, use them. I'm going to play this clip for you right now, and I'm just going to go through the entire game.
I'm confused too now. Oh, right, okay, yeah, let's go now. I didn't know they'd gone through already, but I knew that this was going to happen.
So here's the first thing to note, and that is, I mentioned earlier that Nick gets increased health buffs from adrenaline, and that makes adrenaline actually a viable option to take, not just for speed, but for the health, when usually that wouldn't be the case. This just seems like the perfect clip to demonstrate that, because I'm about to go down and I get absolutely saved by the temporary health given by the adrenaline, which usually would not be significant enough to have saved me. By the way, I think this might be a little bit more than normal. I don't remember off the top of my head right now, because I haven't done the Ellis video yet, but I believe that the fact that I have an Ellis on my team is increasing it even further. Now this game really gets off to a rough start, mostly because at this point, where I've gotten boomed and I temporarily didn't know what my team weights were, I heard that someone got charged, but trying to follow the sound, I couldn't figure out where they got charged to. I kind of assumed that they tried to charge them off the edge, you know, over the one-way gap, but that wasn't where they were. And so eventually I kind of gave up on finding them until the bio wore off, and I kind of hoped that maybe my other teammates would find them, but no, poor Ballbuster over there had been charged all the way back into this corner, which was obviously would have been hard to see without the glow, and it took me until this point to realise he was there. At this point, he's already taken a lot of damage, and you're going to see that I'm going to really try and kill this charger as fast as possible with the Magnum, and I get close, but I sadly do not manage to do it in time. That means that Ballbuster's already dead, and we just started. So usually this would spell disaster, that we've already lost this game by the looks of things. Someone's fully dead, and we barely left the safe room. But of course, I use my bind 2 to bring him back, which usually wouldn't be that great because, of course, that's the entirety of my bind 2 I've used for the entire game. But still, it brings him back. Also, because I kind of got charged before I killed him. Look, okay, he was really close to dying. I'm actually really surprised he managed to charge me before he died. But it's all completely fine since, obviously, I brought Ball right back and he saved me very, very quickly. Now this game really is the perfect game to show off what Nick comebacks feel like, because not only were we really screwed right at the start, but even just barely getting out at the start, already we have a moment here where really we should have died. We would have actually lost this game if this guy Buttjuice over here, nice name, decided not to keep firing while he was down, which is understandable. A lot of people don't even try to shoot things off with their pistol because it's very rare that it actually manages to work. But thankfully, because he had decided to use his pistol to shoot this smoker off of me, I was able to shoot my pistol, which is obviously a lot stronger, which shot the smoker off of the bot, and then the bot single-handedly actually managed to bring us back from death, which is really lucky. Ballbuster, sadly, is dead again. Kind of came out of nowhere, but I don't know why he decided to take the second route where he didn't go through the factory and instead went around the outside where you can get insta-killed, and well, I don't know what insta-killed him, but something insta-killed him off the cliff. So, yeah, we would have been dead here, and it's really kind of crazy that we weren't dead here. Now, sadly, I was the only one that the bot was able to save, but it even got another scary moment right here because the bot got charged at this moment, and just as before they got charged, you can hear the bot saying smoker somewhere around here. So I know there's a smoker that's just spawned that is able to grab me, and the bot is also currently grabbed, and I need to shoot a whole charger off of them as fast as possible. And once again, the damage of the Magnum being good for dealing with charges saved us here, because if I couldn't kill the charger quickly just by unloading my whole clip, then we would have been caught here too, because obviously the smoker just would have grabbed me before I could even free him, and then we're both grabbed, and then that's it. There's no one to save anyone. And then on top of that, as if it couldn't get any more lucky, the bot gets taken over by someone who is actually a player who uses the mod, and they just so happen to be playing Rochelle, who of course has the grappling hook. And I don't actually realise this until I was rewatching this clip for the editing. I remember being so confused what happened here, because I remember seeing suddenly Ballbuster was back alive, and they were all the way back at the beginning. I'm like, what the hell? What happened there? Because I was especially so focused on just everything else that was going on, because this was such a stressful moment. And for a second, I'm glad I didn't say it, but I was kind of almost thinking, wait, did they use admin things? Did they abuse their admin powers to bring themselves back to life? Because I really couldn't think of any way they got back. But this is what happened.
Ballbuster died twice this game, of course. They were the one that died right at the start, as well as when they died by getting insta-killed over the cliff. And when I gambled earlier and got loads of defibs, the guy who just joined, Mike, actually picked one of them up and then grappled back to the start and defibbed the body that was still, around because it hadn't been knocked off the cliff. So because he died twice, he had two bodies, and although one of them was completely gone off the other side of the cliff, the other one you could still defib. And I didn't even think about that because you couldn't have gotten back to that body normally, but because they picked Rochelle, they could grappling hook back over the cliff to get to the body. That is really, really cool, and it's just a great example of the kind of stuff that you would only see in XP mod. Just like every now and then you'll just have a game where you realize, oh shit, you can do that. Now here I'll admit that this play that I make here is arguably questionable, but personally I still stand by it and I think I still did the right thing in hindsight. Here I get bioled and I know that leaving this little factory area there is a small opportunity to get insta-killed, which could still happen. XP mod, it's easier to get insta-kills and we've already seen Ball get insta-killed this game, so we don't want to have that happen. And then as well as that, there's of course the car alarm to worry about. Now I'm currently biled, and as a Nick, I'm very worried about that. So I'm thinking I need to get somewhere where I'm not going to be surrounded by commons, and I also want to do as much as possible to reduce the risk of setting off the car alarm or letting someone get insta-killed. So I know that near here, if I just run this direction, there's a little ladder I can climb up and I can get on top of one of these train cars. And from there, I can just safely crouch, snipe things with my Magnum if there's anything trying to camp the car alarms or trying to set up an insta-kill. And as well as that, of course, having such a wide view of the area, I'm going to stop a lot of spawns near insta-kill spots and near the car alarm. So it's going to be a lot harder for them to use any of those kind of obstacles. Now, of course, this is a questionable play because I have to go a decent distance on my own and I have to separate myself from the team. Not by a crazy amount, but by enough of an amount that realistically a smoker in a nasty spot or something like that could actually really do some damage to me. But I'm feeling pretty confident I can get away with this because, first of all, I believe I heard two special infected sounds behind me at this moment. I definitely heard a hunter, and I think I hear a charger. And they're both pretty far behind me as well, so I know they're going for my teammates in the back. I'm not particularly worried about that, though, because I know that my three other teammates are grouped closer together, and I'm like a little bit further ahead. So I know that they're going to go for the people who are bunched together, because they're in the way of them getting to me. So I can run ahead without those two being able to get to me, and then it's unlikely that there are as many special infected waiting for me because I know there's at least two behind me. And again, I'm not worried that they're going to kill my teammates because they should be able to take care of each other. Now again, it's kind of questionable. It's possible they could have dealt with all three of them if the charger did an earthquake and then knocked someone off the map, and then while also pinning someone when the hunter gets the third person. But it's a bit far-fetched for that to happen. All that being said, I do that to get over there and, as I say, prevent spawns, get myself in a nice vantage point where I can snipe people with the Magnum so that insta-kills won't happen, and get myself away from the commons. After this, I also do the next kind of slightly questionable thing, but again, I still think I did the right thing. We still have one bot, and I am very concerned that we are going to lose because of this bot, because this bot is extremely low health, and of course it's a bot, it's not very smart. So I'm feeling we need to heal it. And so I'm trying to heal it here before it gets to the car alarm or insta-kill spot, but it doesn't really work out. And then I'm just like, well, screw it, I've already committed to this, I need to keep trying to heal it. To be fair, I think if I didn't heal it here, we would get stuck in a cycle of them constantly pulling it back to where the car alarm and insta-kill spots are, with smokers and chargers going backwards. So I still think I did the right thing here, but definitely I will admit questionable. Actually, I think I was also keen to use it because I was fishing for adrenaline, because I was realizing, because of how bad this game started, that it might be possible that I might need to run ahead at one point, and I wanted to have the adrenaline there as an option since I had to use it at the start of the round. Instead I get pills, but pills is nothing to complain about, and I do give that to one of my teammates to make sure everyone's healthy, and that gives us more ability to stick together. So even though I didn't get what I was after, it still worked out. And of course, just when you think that we're really going to make this comeback, the worst thing possible happens.
I've just got myself to this door and I'm crouching and waiting for my teammates, just getting ready to snipe anything off anyone that lands on anyone. And of course, the old bot Zoe at the back gets grabbed by a jockey, which shouldn't be that bad on its own. I'm prepared for that situation. However, the jockey uses its bind 1 to piss on him, which is basically like a boomer-bile. Only that has a 1 in 10 chance of spawning a tank. Now, the tank does have reduced health. I believe at the moment it's 1/3 health, but at the time of recording this, it was half health. But it's still a tank, and it's still a modded tank as well. It's not a vanilla tank. So it's still pretty devastating. And I was basically feeling like, well, that's the end of this round at this point. I would have run ahead if it weren't for the fact that I realised that I think going through this narrow house, there's no way running ahead is going to work for me. So I thought, right, well, I don't think we can beat it, but let's give it a go. So I obviously go to try to shoot the jockey off of Zoe, and I prepare myself, group all up at this spot. It's the most open spot we can get to without having to really fall back a long way. You can see I get my Molotov ready. I don't know what type of tank it is yet. This might have been a mistake on my part, to be honest, because the fire tank is the most common type that you see, just because it's the most simple and it's also just a good tank. A lot of people pick fire tank, and a fire tank is immune to fire. So Molotovs aren't useful against it. But I think I just had this Molotov at the ready because I was especially wary of a Necro Tanker, which is probably the one that's most vulnerable against Molotovs, which can spawn more zombies and heal by killing its own zombies. And I feel like a Necro Tanker in this spot could really screw us over. So I was being a bit paranoid and I was really being ready with the Molotov in case it was a Necro Tanker. Unfortunately, it was a fire tank, which means that, of course, we cannot use our Molotovs against it. It won't take any damage from it. Now, you can see that I don't really go for it in this gameplay, but that is on purpose. I realize that I am the most useless tank damage on our team, and that we do have an Ellis who is literally made for killing tanks. So I realize there's not much point in me fighting the tank. I'm not going to do much damage. I'm going to put myself in the way of danger when I'm like kind of the team's medic. And as well as that, I feel like the only way we could die here, if our Ellis is going to be competent with this tank and take it down quickly, which they do end up doing, the way that we're going to die is by getting caught off guard by Special Infected doing things that they shouldn't be able to get away with, but they do because we're distracted by the tank. So instead, you can even see I go for this snipe on a spitter on the roof of this house, even when the tank is like within my view clearly, because I realise that spitter might actually be more important than the tank. I'm going to do barely any damage to the tank if I try and shoot it, whereas I'm able to kill that spitter if I'm accurate enough, which luckily I am. And if I don't kill that spitter, then that spitter could easily, perhaps, when the tank corners someone against a wall or something, cover him in spit and lead to a full death, perhaps. And obviously, I don't have enough binds to get another resurrection. I'd have to gamble and hope that I got another defib, which, would be pretty lucky if I did. I do kind of get beat up by this tank here. Not really much to say. A fire tank is faster than survivors, which is one of the reasons why it's a good one. Even at full health, unless you're using adrenaline or some kind of bind or ability that gives you a speed boost, fire tanks can outrun you. I'm a Nick. I don't have anything to stop it from being able to run me into a corner. Luckily, I do not get downed at this point. I get very close to it, but Ball was very quick in pelting that damage into the tank the second that they took their focus off of them. That luckily meant that they got enough damage in to kill it. And as well as that, I also survived because I luckily managed to roll some pain pills from the gamble, which gave me the health boost I needed. The clip is still going for a bit just because a lot of stuff happened right after the tank died as well. You can see that I kind of focus on Zoe straight away because I realize, of course, again, the bot is what they're going to go for at this point. I've mentioned before that one of the worst things you can do in XP mod is stay in the same area for a long time. And I realize we've been here for a bit. So the next logical step that any of the infected are going to do right now is they're probably going to be kind of in a panic mode because their tanks just died really quickly. They're going to want to attack fast and do whatever they can to keep us in this spot and stop us from progressing. Because once we get into that house, there's literally just the Endless Horde at the end and we're done. They probably can't do much to us inside the house unless they get like a really good spit. So I knew they'd go straight for the Zoe, and they do. She tries to get smoked and I save her. And then a charger successfully downs her. To try and help out, I realise, okay, the Zoe is down and we do want to revive her, but number one priority is we have to make sure no matter what she doesn't fully die, because of course at this point, I am not able to resurrect anyone anymore. So even though I realize it might interfere a little with getting a faster revive on Zoe, I actually throw a Molotov at her. I also did this knowing that Ballbuster, who is playing Ellis, is immune to fire, because that's one of Ellis's abilities. So he wouldn't be damaged if it was him who went for the revive anyway, which was who I was expecting to do it. But the main reason I do this is because fire basically instantly kills commons when it touches them, unless it's a Cedar agent, because that's their special kind of gimmick, is they're immune to fire. I throw it down there to make sure there's no commons on Zoe, because if you didn't realize, and this isn't even an XP mod thing, this is just in vanilla Left 4 Dead, commons do massively increased damage to someone who's already down. In versus mode at least, it depends on the difficulty otherwise, but in versus mode, if a common hits you, it only deals 2 damage to you. But if a common hits you while you're down, it deals 10 damage. And that's per common that hits you. So I realize the main way we're going to lose this Zoe and they're not going to make it is if while they're down and we're trying to revive them, just enough common infected show up to be able to fully kill her really quickly. Now I realize that there aren't that many common infected around at this particular moment, but I am a little bit paranoid here because I'm thinking a boomer could come any second, or a spitter, because spitters spawn zombies when they spawn in and also spawn zombies when they spit in this mod. So I was obviously concerned about both of those possibilities. That is why I threw the Molotov. I'm not really sure if it worked out in the end, but I mean, it didn't stop us from winning. So
Look at this dude.
I'm down!
now my actions here may seem a little bit drastic, and they might have been, but at this point I decide, you know what? I'm not going to save those last 2 charges for an instant revive. I'm going straight for the heals, because I am now thinking, we have been here way too long. All my gut feeling alarm bells are going off that if we stay here any longer, we're just screwed, and that we don't have time if someone goes down for me to try and revive them again. Not unless by the time they're down, they're inside the house. So I basically run into that house, make sure everyone's healed up as much as possible so that they have as little excuse as possible to fall behind and not follow me, and run in and then wait there for people to follow. And luckily Ball follows me, and the other 2 are obviously trying to follow, and they eventually make it. But you can see that before that happens, a charger comes to attack us. Now it may seem a little bit weird that I'm going all out of my way to check this little back side room here, which definitely, I'm not going to say it's the perfect reaction, but essentially when I heard that charger spawn, the main thing I was thinking is I actually want to separate myself from Ballbuster just enough, because of the fact that one of the charger's binds causes an earthquake, which causes everyone around them who gets hit to take big damage and get stunned temporarily. And I'm very wary that that is going to be devastating if it hits us both. So I'm thinking it would honestly be better if just one of us gets hit by a charger and then the other one comes to save them. Now I still do get hit by an earthquake, but at least it doesn't immobilize both of us at once. And because I've checked this back room, I can now obviously confirm there are no zombies there, and I've made it more difficult for anything to spawn in there and catch me off guard from the back while I'm saving Ballbuster. There certainly is an argument to be made that if I wanted to separate myself from Ballbuster, that I should have gone up the stairs instead. That would prevent spawns ahead of us, but I'm just a bit nervous that if something has already spawned ahead, which very likely it could have, and that thing is something like a jockey which would be able to pull me further away from my team, I'm pretty screwed then, because obviously Ball's going to get charged, and then the only 2 people who are going to be able to save me are going to be not even in the house while I'm getting jockeyed out the top window of it. And by the way, once you leave that window, it's an endless horde until everyone makes it to the safe room. So if they manage to jockey me far enough away to get to that window, then we would have been really screwed. Definitely there's an argument for going up the stairs instead, but I was just a little bit nervous about trying to take that. I really didn't have a backup plan for if there was a jockey up there. I thought it was a better idea to go for this back room, because although it is a bit finicky and out of the way, the upside of that is it means that if I get caught in there, I can't get pulled anywhere far away, because they can only try and take me out the back room, but that will bring me closer to my teammates. There you go. With quick thinking and good strategy, we really turned this game around. I mean, remember how this game started. We were all biled, Ball was fully dead by 5 steps out the safe room,
and we were completely scattered from the very beginning. And then only a few steps further than that, we were at a point where every single person was either downed or grabbed. And even after we lived that, thanks to someone just managing to save us with their pistol, we still had 2 people fully dead and a bot. That was really a bad start, and that's something that you can see a lot of people just quitting when they see that. Just thinking, right, that's the end of that game. And yet look at the end of it now. Now, minus the defib penalty, we're looking at a perfect score. We were going to get full points here for beating this map with all 4 people still alive after 3 full deaths, one of them being an insta-kill, and as well as that, the enemy team getting the 1 in 10 shot of getting a tank spawn. Like, they got a free extra tank, and as well as that, we had to constantly babysit a bot, and we still made it to the end. And that is the power of Nick, my friend. Wait,
Oh no.
what's that sound? No! I've never even been insta-killed there before. Look. Oh! Oh, it was such a comeback too. It would have been so nice if that was actually a perfect after all that shit at the start. Whatever, we took the lead from a losing game. So here's the thing. I want to give some, just a teeny bit more context as to why I was especially mad about something last video.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would, but I legally can't. But I've considered it.
Now, it's pretty normal that you see people go AFK after they die, and it's kind of frustrating when you bring them back and they're still AFK, but, you know, it happens. But I was a little bit frustrated about it last video. Let me explain why that is. You see this big comeback we did in that clip that you just saw? Even though I did die at the end, and that was quite crushing, we still got a crazy amount of points. And you can see that we did very well compared to the other team as well. We got a lot more points than them. Basically, this entire campaign, I don't know why, I just felt very determined to try and turn it around and win. Because it was just, the odds were stacked against us for almost the entire campaign. For the first 3 chapters, I was constantly getting stuck with teammates that had never played the mod before against high-level players. And I was just trying my absolute best to try and carry them through it, and just was really struggling. And I really, really fell behind in the first few games, and I was just frustrated because I knew that, damn it, if the teams were even right now, I know that we would be having like a close game right now, but we are getting absolutely destroyed. And it just felt really good that here we were finally able to get that comeback and even take the lead from them. So I got unusually kind of emotionally invested in, oh boy, can't wait to win this campaign now, because I felt pretty confident we were going to win now, because the Blood Harvest finale is really, really, really easy. The Blood Harvest finale is probably the worst finale in the game, to be honest, because it's so easy to just camp in that one spot outside and beat all the tanks. In fact, if anything, the only 2 places you're going to die in the Blood Harvest finale are most likely in the cornfield or at the very beginning at the insta-kill spot. Those are probably the only 2 places you're going to die in at Blood Harvest. I'd be surprised if you died anywhere else for the most part. So I really thought that this would probably end with both of us getting a perfect on the finale, but us still winning because we already had the point advantage before the finale. But you see this clip of the Blood Harvest finale? Yeah, if you put 2 and 2 together, you might be able to figure out this is the same game. And I really do mean it. That guy Ray Zerg who went AFK, we would not have lost here if he didn't go AFK. We would have been fine. Because we only died here because the 2 best players here, which would be me and Mike, were both down, and we just needed someone to come revive us, anyone. And, well, there was no one around to do it. Because one of them was still stuck in the cornfield. I don't know how that happened, to be honest. And the other one is standing around doing nothing. After I've just used all of my binds to bring them back. So yeah, I usually won't get too frustrated about this, but I really got invested in trying to make a comeback this game and turn it around. It would have felt like a really good underdog story, it would have felt like a really well-deserved victory, and then that just happens. Blah. Is that it then? Yeah, I can't find any more content to cram down your throats. Probably for the best. I don't know how long this video is right now. I don't want to know how long this video is right now, don't I? I probably don't. Well, anyway, but that combined with the length of the first video is probably going to be over an hour. And maybe it's not a good idea that I made more than an hour of content on this one character. I've got 2 more to go after all. I might have to turn it down for the future ones. Speaking of which, just a little heads up. I know this is creating even more work for myself, but considering I'm especially more focused on talking about the survivors compared to the infected at the moment, I may redo the Bill video, and possibly the Rochelle one, but I think the Bill one is the other one I'm really focused on, just because I know it's the first video in the series, so obviously more people are going to see it, and it was literally the first video I properly edited. So, as you can imagine, there were problems with it that I wouldn't have let go now, because of the fact that it was literally the first time I properly edited a video. And so, I would want to redo it and do it a bit better. But that is way in the future once we've done all 6 characters. So yeah. And then maybe by then they'll have had a 7th character already, who knows. So it might be a while away, but either way, I plan on redoing it at some point. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. By the way, the next one's probably going to be in 3 years. No! Oh!
Now I am free to roam this earth. I'm gonna say the N-word.